Failure? Can I tell you a story? It's a story I've told many times in my classes, but I'll tell it again. It's not so much about you or anyone in this class, it's about really me. And the things I've come to realize after having done not a lot of things, but some things, I suppose. It's about a carpenter who one day calls his boss and says, I don't want to work anymore. I don't want to build houses anymore. Thanks for the past 30 years of giving me a job and give me some money so I can eat bagels. But I think at this stage, my body is far too weak and feeble. It's all messed up. So let me just walk away in peace. And his boss is fine. But his boss likes him a lot. So picks up the phone and calls him and says, listen, Amir, build this one last house for me, and I'll give you triple the salary. And then you can retire to the mountains and think about the meaning of life and the purpose of your existence and all that. And I say, well, okay, let me think about it. I hang up the phone, I consider his proposal. I say, well, that's not a bad thing. I can now have cream cheese with my bagel. And I call him and I say, okay, I accept. There is this conflict that we have. Let's say emotionally you want to walk away from this class because it is boring, you don't like me, you don't like the way I look, the way I sound, the way I speak about things. Intellectually, on the other hand, you say you need this class. And so you live in two worlds, the world of intellect that is a bit more honest, that says, walk away from this class. It doesn't nourish you in any way. And in fact, every time you go to the class and look at him and hear his voice, you're repulsed, extremely repulsed. Well, that's what the emotions tell you. Intellectually, you say, no, stick around, it's only 16 weeks, suffer a little bit. That's the place of the saints and the sages, suffering in silence. And even though I know physically I don't really want to be in this house, emotionally, knowing again I'm completely drained, I also say, well, cream cheese and bagel, some extra cash wouldn't be bad. Once I get involved in building this house, I come to realize I just don't want to be there. I don't want to build this house. So I hire people who don't really know what they're doing, and I buy the cheapest materials, and I build this house. And then I call this guy to come and inspect. And he gives me the key to the house, and he says, this is your house. He paid for the material. He's also paying me for my labor, and he's also giving me this lot of land. And at first I'm very, very happy, but then I realized that this house is made in such a clumsy way that it's going to fall apart in no time. As you move through life, you move with images, you move with narratives, you move with dreams, fantasies, hopes. You want to get married, you want to have children, and maybe it's different for men than it is for women. You want to go to school, you want to get degrees, you want to go to Princeton and get a job eventually, you want to teach. And these are just houses you build, or maybe these are just rooms you built inside this house or mansion. At a certain point, like anyone who gets up in age, you kind of look at your environment and you say, why do I have 50 chairs and 25 tables? Why do I need all these sofas? Do I really need all these clothes and jackets and books and this and that? And you realize these are things that you fantasize having, and now you have them. But now you feel that what you've accumulated is cluttering your inner and outer worlds. And then you say, can someone please come over and just grab everything that I possess? Just get rid of them. I'm not like a Ludwig Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein was a monk from the very beginning of his life. Even though when his father had left him millions of dollars in investments, he wanted to give everything away. Everything. He wanted to join a monastery only to realize the monk who interviewed him, he just didn't like. So he just swept the grounds. And of course, ultimately he had cancer and died. And you don't have to get to be my age to come to that realization. You work for In-N-Out, you save your money, and you buy a brand new car. Let's say your dream car, Mustang. After 2 months, you sit back and you say, how could I have been that stupid? I spent $50,000 on what? It could have been a down payment for a house. I could have gone to school with that. I could have maybe taken my parents on a trip. And when you talk about failure, what happens is you are governed by dreams at every stage of your life. When I was doing my surgery, or when I was in the middle of it, I said, I'm going to go home and eat well, exercise every single day. That's the fantasy. I can't do it. Am I a failure? Absolutely. Because the house that's built by dreams, by narratives, require a certain amount of will, knowledge, information, fear, respect. I don't have any of that. And the other aspect is you get to know your salt in time, your worth in time. And it just takes a while. You buy all sorts of things for your kids. Eventually they sit outside in the rain and gather rust. That's how things are. That's what life is. It just oxidizes everything you touch. It's not a good perspective to have. It's not the best way to move through life, knowing that everything gets old, everything gets sick, and everything ultimately dies. Buddha's perspective is no good. And I think Buddha, the only reason why his message is so popular is because he had an audience that gravitated towards that particular perspective of life. Life is no good. You're no good. Because at the end of the tunnel, what's waiting for you is disappointment, unless you understand things the right way. And what is that understanding? Life is no good. Expect nothing. All of life is failure. And he found power in expressing that particular message. And he had more power by having ears that listened to that particular message. And people liked it. Why? Because they can relate. When you talk about failure, it reminds me of this Taoist story about this father telling his son, why don't you go to the stable and take care of the horses a little? The son goes and feeds the horses, comes home and says, Dad, I did everything you asked for. And the father says, great, you're a good son. The father gets up in the morning, goes to the stable only to realize all the horses are gone. And they're gone because, or the one horse that they had, he's gone because, well, the son left the gate unlocked. And the father goes home, looks at the son and says, what a miserable creature you are. You're so stupid. How could you leave the gate unlocked? The horse is gone. 10 minutes later, the horse comes back with 50 horses. And the father looks at the son and says, maybe you're not an idiot after all. And all of a sudden, the way the father looks at the son is different. The way the father looks at calamity is different. That maybe all things happen for a reason. So as the father is rejoicing and they're playing with the horses, one of the horses goes wild and kicks the son in the knee and his legs break. And the father says, my life is so busy, there's so many things I gotta do, but now my son, he can't help me. What am I gonna do with all these things on my plate? 10 minutes later, a war breaks out. And the king and his goons are going around town looking for young men to join the battle. Knocks on this guy's door, this farmer's door, and says, you have a son, they've been told. I need him. Says, yeah, but he has a broken leg. Oh, useless, goes away. And the point I'm trying to make is what seems to be a failure at one point becomes a thing of triumph.